So, I've been playing The Division all weekend, like literally all weekend. I'd say at this point I'm almost addicted to it. I'm considering seeing a therapist to try and curb the need that I have to play this game, but not to worry, Ubisoft are taking this away from us again in the next few hours, so I'm going to be very sad come Monday morning. To compare the experience I had in the closed beta and the open beta, there isn't really much to compare. There's another story mission to complete, some changes to the way that the damage works in the Dark Zone, and some kit got switched up. If you've played both versions, you're likely, and I say likely as some people have noticed quite a bit of a difference, but you are likely to feel like you are playing exactly the same game. But, yet again, this is a big but, I've noticed a big change in the mentality in the Dark Zone. I'm not sure if it's down to anything that the developers have really changed, but I know they have made some changes, and it certainly seems that the Dark Zone, being the PvP section of the game, has become a lot more hostile this time around. Now, as this is an open beta, I'd expect a lot more people and their friends to be grouping up and roaming together. It's natural, it's a good way to play, you've got safety in numbers, and ultimately the game is more fun when you've got someone to fight it through with. I've been playing on my own, with my microphone on, trying to sort of stay in the shadows, not provoking the gunfights, and really doing my best just to find some cool gear. If a fight is going on nearby and someone has gone rogue, depending on how many players are there in that situation, I might go and join in, but the majority of the time I just steer clear. Might sound like a bit of a boring way to play, but the NPCs have been seriously buffed in this open beta, and many more of them guarding checkpoints and rare loot locations as well. There's just a lot more of them. And the NPCs can be just as rewarding to fight as the people that are actually on the server. And I'm going to use the word unfortunately here because I think it's quite appropriate. Unfortunately, it seems the whole population of each server seems to know this as well. You can easily solo a whole group of NPCs, but it's only a matter of time before you attract the attention of nearby players. And this is where my biggest issue lies right now with The Division. And yet again, it sits with the system currently used to identify an agent who's gone rogue. Ubisoft have addressed the issues of many in the open beta by including a new function that warns you if you've landed shots on another player, that if you continue to do damage, you will go rogue. Now this in principle does sound like a good change. I think a visual marker to identify to you that you're making a choice is a good thing. But my issue is, again, with how this moral choice can be affected by random gameplay. I have a couple of examples to show you, some good ones actually, because they kind of sit both sides of the fence. Ones that occurred during normal gameplay whilst I was fighting hordes of NPCs. I'll show you the clip and then I'll explain why my rogue status, and ultimately my death, was not warranted. Here's the first one. Okay, so I've tracked through this building, come across two players fighting off a strong NPC, and I decide to go in and try and help them finish him off. I use my rifle to land some damage on him, and then I push forwards to try and complete the job up close. I decide to use my remote sticky grenade perk, I'm not really sure what it's called, but I end up firing the shot and it sticks to the NPC. Then, the player right in front of the door kills the NPC almost as soon as I landed that grenade, which causes my grenade to explode. The player is inside the grenade's blast radius, meaning he took damage when my grenade exploded, which was only intended to kill the NPC. I now get marked as rogue. I go into the room to pick up loot, and the now 3 other players turn round and shoot me because I'm rogue. Of course, I understand that reaction, I'm rogue and therefore likely to be hostile, so they just shoot on sight. But again, due to the game's low damage threshold for going rogue, I'm now punished for what was a completely non-hostile explosion against another player. I didn't mean for him to get hit by the blast. I've now been punished for something that was out of my control. I didn't detonate the grenade, either it exploded once the NPC died, or one of the other two players that were shooting at the NPC, which was Barbanton or Apple Pie 808, shot the grenade on the NPC's body. That damage was not meant for the players it hit, it was meant for the NPC. But due to a mechanic built into the game, I ultimately died trying to help other players. Not cool. Now, as I mentioned, I wanted to use two examples here, and this other one sits on the other side of the moral fence, and it's a bit more of my own fault. But again, I think it shows a flaw in the system which decides whether a player is rogue or not. I'll play the section here, it is a little bit shorter. So again, I'm fighting a group of NPCs and I attract the attention of other players. One of them moves off into the checkpoint grounds to take out targets, while I continue to take them out with my M1A Classic rifle, which is really good, by the way. It's probably my favourite weapon in the game. So I'm aiming for the head to do more damage, as you would, and I've taken out the majority of NPCs on the left side here. And then I aim up and fire at what I think is another NPC, but actually happens to be a player. I go rogue and again get shot by all of the other players, even though it was clear I was just helping them kill the NPCs. This issue ultimately was caused by my own bullet hitting another player, but the system that's been put in place to warn players about going rogue doesn't occur here. My M1A does more damage than the threshold for going rogue, so one shot to the head and I am rogue. There's no warning for me, so the issue people complained about in the closed beta, not knowing when they'd go rogue or how much damage they had to do to go rogue, is back here again. The whole system that they've implemented has just been bypassed because I shot a very powerful round at another player. Plus, the player name icon, the one that sits above each agent's head that gives you their in-game name and their dark zone level, doesn't appear until only 10 frames before I fire the shot. I measured it whilst editing the footage. Plus, it uses some digital pixel fade-in to match the art style of the game, which is all well and good if it had happened earlier. But my game running at 60 FPS, the length of time between me seeing the player name and me firing the shot is only 1/6 of a second. So the visual feedback I got was way too late for me to change my mind. The icon that pops up to state the person I'm aiming at isn't hostile, that came a little bit earlier, 24 frames before I fired. But again, it was too late by that point. I'm not saying this is entirely the fault of the game, not at all. Ultimately, I was the one here that fired the bullet, but I feel like I wasn't given enough feedback to know that it was a player before I hit the button. Perhaps you'd expect someone with a sniper rifle to take more care with their shots, and maybe I should have, but I was so focused on the NPCs that I didn't expect to see another player there. I assumed it was an NPC, and I shot. Those are just two examples as to how I think the going rogue mechanic isn't quite implemented properly at the moment. The first instance with the sticky grenade was entirely out of my control, and I shouldn't have been punished for that. The second was more of my own fault, but the mechanic built into the game to help remove the barrier of not knowing when you're going to go rogue didn't occur because one bullet took me over the threshold straight away. Now, in the spirit of not just complaining and demand it be fixed, I would like to offer a solution that was mentioned to me by Darkness429 on Twitter last night when I was just ranting about the issue. If you want to follow me on Twitter, by the way, for sarcastic conversations and much happiness, there's a link in the description. But his fix was to only assign rogue status to an agent when they've downed a player. Not downed as in killed, but down to the state where they can be revived by another player. To enter this state, you need to deal significant damage, and that would show fully that you intended to shoot that player. Either this, or a mechanic could be built to show the direction of your fire, and that if a certain amount of rounds land near another player, this would start the warning to state that if you land more shots after this point, you're going to go rogue. Right now, the threshold is simply too low, and the visual feedback just isn't quick or obvious enough to stop random occurrences ruining gameplay. The threshold is so low that going rogue for such a small amount of damage seems frankly quite silly, especially when it can take a huge amount of damage to kill somebody in total. And so there. My rant is over. My objective rant is over. I did make some very good points, I think. But despite the clear issues, and I have to get this into my... I don't know how this works, but despite these clear problems in the game right now, I'm hooked once again. I did not stop playing this game all weekend. I really, really enjoyed it. It is a very good game. And if you still have a chance to play it before Ubisoft shut down the servers again, then you should. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think down in the comments on this rogue status issue. Maybe you disagree with me completely and have something else to say. By all means, do it down below. And while you're down there, drop me a like as well. But until next time, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.